Protesters in Hong Kong are begging the United States and specifically President Trump to help them in their fight for democracy. Tonight, some prominent American conservatives are meeting them in the semi-autonomous territory. The chairman of the American Conservative Union, Matt Schlapp, is in Hong Kong tonight and joins us where it is morning. Good morning to you there, Matt.
Great to be with you, Shannon.
All right, what are you seeing on the streets? We see a lot of things on social media. It's hard to, separate fact from fiction, but what can you tell us firsthand?
Shannon, I've just never seen anything like it. What you have is literally, at points, millions of people, but on a nightly basis, almost every night, you have thousands of mostly what I would call students or kids, teenagers, some as young as 12 years old have been arrested. And they take to the streets by using these new apps and platforms where they can communicate without the government knowing about it. And they pick locations. It is, by and large, peaceful, but it has really rattled the regime.
Well, and I know that we have talked with Joshua Wong. You're talking with other young folks who are sort of leading this movement. We've talked to him. He's been arrested in and out of jail a couple of times since we interviewed him. And with news today that Carrie Lam is bringing back or completely tossing the extradition bill, at least that's the news. Here's his reaction. In one of his tweets, he says, "We urge the world, to alert this tactic and not be deceived by Hong Kong and Beijing government. They have conceded nothing, in fact, and a full-scale clampdown is on the way." A number of these young protesters who are speaking out there don't seem to think that that concession is real or that it really does anything.
Yeah, Shannon, there is a real cynicism. I'll give you an example. We had our third CPAC in Tokyo just days ago, and we invited one of these protest leaders, Andy Chan, to come speak to the conservatives in Japan. And the government arrested him as he boarded his flight. All he was going to simply do was give a speech in a free country of Japan. Then they invited us to come to Hong Kong and meet with other of their leaders. And, the alarming thing for all of these young people is that they see an increased hostility and aggression in the police force, which they believe is more and more controlled by Beijing and less a Hong Kong police force. And I tell you, Shannon, we talked to so many on the street. They're willing to give their lives for this struggle. It's a very emotional thing to see young people committed to democracy. At some of these protests, they bring out the American flag. They sing the American anthem. They quote our founding fathers. This is a very, very important thing. You know what else I learned on the streets, which I was rather shocked? They love President Trump. Over and over and over again, they said, "Will you please go back and tell President Trump that we finally have a president who's standing up to communism?" And they love him for it.
Yeah, and we've played sound bites and shown posters and things, as you mentioned, from the folks there who are waving the American flag, singing the national anthem, saying, "President Trump, we love you," but also saying, "We need your help." And we're also seeing here back at home bipartisan calls for this administration to step up and do more. There's not going to be a U.S. military intervention. What could the U.S., you think, reasonably be expected to do, or should they, in this situation?
Well, I don't think from the protest leaders I talked to, they're not expecting America to, troops to hit the ground. They're not expecting anything other, but what they told me is tell the president to double down on his pressure on the regime. We've had this conversation in America about tariffs, and different people have different views of tariffs. The question of Hong Kong is very unique. It's about human rights, the ability to vote, the ability to peaceably assemble. And so the message that I think that they want the president to understand is that they appreciate that he's being strong, and they want him to continue to be strong. Don't back down, because they believe it's the only way that they'll get true change in China. And look, we all want China to get to a better place, and at times it seems like they were. And Hong Kong is an example of where there is a frightening side to having a communist overlord. And the American people and our president, we are the quintessential voice on all these questions about democratic values. But what they could do specifically, Shannon, is don't give Hong Kong a carve-out on these trade policies.
All right, Matt Schlapp there on the ground in Hong Kong. Thank you very much for joining us.